What is going on, everybody? Shwazy here, and in today's video we're going to discuss whether the entry-level 2.3 liter EcoBoost engine that comes on the Ford Bronco is enough engine or power for a vehicle of this size, specifically with the Sasquatch package. So let's get behind the wheel and let's talk about it. Okay, so let's say you're in the market for a new or used Ford Bronco, but you're trying to decide which engine option to pick. Now, there are two options, and I'm not talking about the Ford Bronco Raptor because that one has a totally different engine. But if you're choosing the regular Bronco, you either have the 2.3 liter 4-cylinder EcoBoost, which is the engine I have in my vehicle, or the 2.7 liter V6 that you can pay a little extra money for and upgrade for your Ford Bronco. Now, at the same time, you may be a little bit concerned about the reliability of the 2.7 liter because there have been some reports out there of engine valve problems on the 2.7 liter. Now, the question of whether that's been fixed or whether that's really going to impact you, especially if you have the vehicle under warranty, that's a totally different question. But that is something to consider if you're choosing the 2.7 liter because that has been an issue for some 2.7 liter owners. So let's say you want to choose the 2.3 liter, but is that enough power to move a vehicle of this size? Well, that's what we're going to answer in today's video, because personally, I've had experience driving the 2.3 liter without the Sasquatch package, with the Sasquatch package, and I have driven the 2.7 liter V6 at the Bronco Off-Rodeo. So I do have experience with all three different types of setups. And I'm going to give you my honest thoughts about whether I think this engine is good enough for whatever setup you're running. Okay, so for those of you that are not familiar with the channel, I purchased this 2021 Ford Bronco back in July of 2021, and this was the Big Bend trim level without the Sasquatch package. So it was a pretty low-end Ford Bronco. It didn't have too many bells and whistles, but I kind of wanted to keep it that way because I came from a Toyota RAV4, which had a naturally aspirated 2.5 liter engine, which was plenty fine for, getting from point A to point B, but it was by no means quick. And so I didn't really expect or need something to be quick because I have a Dodge Challenger Hellcat for that. This just needed to be a pretty reliable and, peppy engine, enough for me to get from point A to point B and pass some people on the freeway. And my immediate impressions sitting in this car, of course, without the Sasquatch package, was that this engine was actually pretty quick. I never felt like it was underpowered. It was always very easy to pass people on the freeway, especially from that 40 to 70 mile an hour range. That is where this engine really shines. Now, fast forward to April of 2022, and that is when I purchased the wheel and tire and suspension setup from a Bronco Sasquatch package. So I knew an individual that was upgrading their suspension setup, and so they were selling their setup, and I decided to purchase it. I made a video about the process about a year ago. Now, the first thing I did was I actually upgraded the wheels and tires. So for those of you that don't know, the Big Bend comes with about 32.5-inch tires sitting on 17-inch wheels. I upgraded to the Sasquatch, which was a 17-inch wheel, same size of wheel, but the tire was 35 inches, so an extra 3 inches more than what I was having on my stock Big Bend Bronco. Also, in addition to the diameter being bigger, the width of the tire is actually quite a bit wider as well. And I will speak from firsthand experience, loading these wheels and tires on and off the vehicle, the Sasquatch wheels and tires are significantly heavier than the stock wheels and tires that came on my Big Bend Bronco. And of course, if you're adding more weight without upgrading the size of your engine, you're gonna feel a little bit more sluggish. Now, my firsthand experience was I honestly could not tell the difference between the 32.5-inch tires I had and the 35-inch Sasquatch tires I had as soon as I upgraded them about a year ago. It would be very difficult for me to tell the difference between the two, and I was very surprised by that because, like I said, these wheels and tires are not light by any means. Now, fast forward to June of last year, and that is when I actually got the Sasquatch shocks installed on my Bronco. So the local mechanic I know, he's a great guy. He did the work. He removed the stock shocks that come on the Big Bend, and he upgraded them to the Bilstein shocks that come on the Sasquatch Bronco. Now, after my buddy did the installation of the suspension, which, in case you're wondering, it adds about 2 inches of lift over the stock suspension setup that I had in my Big Bend. So it adds a little bit of height. And of course, when you add a little bit more height, you start getting a little bit more drag because the car is a little bit taller. You're a much larger block that's hitting against the wind than you are when you're like a low slung sports car. And honestly, that is when I noticed the biggest difference between the non-Sasquatch wheels and tire setup versus the Sasquatch setup. It really had to do with the suspension. And I'm not an engineer, I don't really know the physics of it, I don't really know why it happened, but I do know that I noticed that this engine was a little bit more sluggish than the stock setup I had back when I purchased the car back in 2021. That being said, there was only one instance where I felt like this engine was a little bit underpowered, and that really had to do with the climate. It was the middle of July, it was over 100 degrees, and I had to do a quick left-hand turn into a strip mall to avoid getting hit by oncoming traffic. And I distinctly remember that time when I mashed on the gas pedal, there was quite a bit of a lag with that turbocharger kicking in and being able to move the weight of this vehicle to avoid getting hit by cars. Thankfully, I didn't get hit by oncoming traffic, but that was probably my closest call. And that was one time when I felt like this engine was just a little underpowered. That really more so had to do with the temperature of the air outside of the vehicle than it had to do with the engine itself. To be honest, the 2.7 liter V6 may have been a little bit quicker, but it would have had the same impact to the turbocharger because the density of the air is just that much worse in warmer climates than it is in colder climates. So aside from that one experience in the middle of July, this 2.3 liter has never felt underpowered with the Sasquatch setup that I have on my Bronco right now. All right, let's do a little bit of an acceleration here on the freeway. This is not in sport mode. Pedal to the ground. And we made it to 70 miles an hour. Now, I passed quite a few people on this on-ramp without really much of a problem. Now, the 0 to 60 is not where this engine shines. It really shines when you're going from like 55, where I'm at right now, and you stomp on it, and I'm at 70 miles an hour. So that is where this engine really shines, is that 50 to 80 mile per hour range, because at that speed, you're at the RPM where this turbocharger really kicks in and gives you that torque that you need to pass people on the freeway. And that is why I really like this 2.3 liter. I've never felt like it was underpowered, because anytime I really need to pass somebody on the freeway, this thing always has plenty of get up to get me from point A to point B. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I did drive the 2.7 liter EcoBoost V6 at the Bronco Off-Rodeo in April of last year. And in full disclosure, we didn't get a good chance to drive that vehicle on, freeway on-ramps and, passing people on the freeway. If you've ever been to the Bronco Off-Rodeo, it's really more of a low-speed type of rock crawling experience. There are a couple times where you could get that vehicle up to 65 miles an hour, but it's not like my experience with the 2.3 liter where I've driven it in almost every single condition and I'm very familiar with it. That being said, there were a couple times where we got it on some straightaways, and I will say the 2.7 liter felt a little bit more limber. It felt a little bit, more agile. It's kind of quicker. Honestly, the best way I can describe it is the 2.7 liter made the Bronco feel a little bit lighter than it actually is. I mean, the horsepower is not that big of a difference. You're looking at about 300 horsepower on the 2.3 liter with premium fuel. You're looking at about 330 on the 2.7. But the big difference has to do with torque. The torque on the 2.3 liter is about 325 pound-feet versus the 2.7 liter is 415 pound-feet. So that's a pretty significant difference. And I think you're primarily gonna notice that when you're doing some acceleration from like 0 to 30 and when you're doing some rock crawling. So to summarize this video, here are my thoughts and recommendations. If you're going to pick a non-Sasquatch Bronco, there's really no reason to go for the 2.7 liter. I would say save that money and invest it into something else, maybe a modification for the car or something not car related. If you're getting the Sasquatch package, it's kind of a toss-up. You could go for the 2.3 liter and you're never really gonna feel like it's slow. But if you're wanting to feel a little bit more quicker, a little bit more in that acceleration standpoint, maybe go for the 2.7 liter and maybe just, you're gonna have to deal with the potential risk of that engine being a little bit less reliable. Now, the only time I would really recommend just going for the 2.7 liter is if you're planning on going above and beyond the size and suspension specifications of the Sasquatch package. What I mean by that is if you're looking at getting 37-inch wheels and tires, or maybe even 40-inch wheels and tires, and you're gonna upgrade the suspension, you're gonna add a lot of metal bumpers to it. When you do that, you're gonna add a lot of extra weight to the vehicle. And at that point, I think the 2.3 liter may feel a little bit sluggish. If you're going to the extent of getting this ultimate off-roader then I think go for the 2.7 liter because that extra weight that's going to be sitting on your car is going to be a little bit easier to move when you have that V6 engine versus the 4-cylinder in the Bronco I'm sitting in today. Other than that, you really can't go wrong with the 2.3 liter. In every single instance that I've driven it and comparing it to the 2.7 liter and comparing it to a non-Sasquatch versus Sasquatch, the 2.3 liter is fantastic, and it's likely going to be a little bit more reliable because it's been used in many more different instances. I mean, this is the same engine in the Ford Ranger. I believe they use the same engine or a version of it in the Mustang, and so I think this engine has been around a lot longer than the 2.7 liter, so you may have a little bit better reliability with this one compared to the upgraded V6. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Did I answer your question? Hopefully I did, because a lot of people have been asking it. But if not, let me know your questions down in the comments below, and I'm going to try to do my best to address those in a future video. What engine size did you pick and why? And do you have any regrets? I think that's all really good information for everybody in the comments below to know. And also, if this is your first time stopping by and you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for all of the weekly car videos. And also check me out on all the social media at Schwazy_, everything from Instagram, Facebook to TikTok. Until next time, everybody, I hope you stay Schwazy, stay healthy, have a wonderful day. See you later.